I did it. I finally joined the club. I got one of these group sets. This group set has literally taken well over 2 months to come, and I was so worried it wasn't going to make it here. But it's finally here. It's at my house, and we're going to open it. We're going to check it out. So here it is, coming in now. This is the Sensah Empire Pro 12-speed group set. So with that being said, let's just get straight into it. So here it is. I believe all the group set components are in here. I would imagine that this box has got the cassette in it, and the chain ring is going to be in this box here. So I'll bring you closer so we can open it, and we'll go for it from there. So as you can see, everything looks fairly beaten up, especially this. This has survived a little bit better, but hasn't been treated that well on its way over from China. But I think let's start with the smallest things first. Let's go with the cassette, and then we'll finish up on the group set itself. So I believe this is the Sunshine cassette. This is what they normally come with. 12 speed. And it is bubble wrapped in there. Okay, these are the brake calipers. There we go. I was not expecting that. I might not put these on depending on them. These haven't got the best reviews. It's more the shifting that have got the reviews themselves, so I might leave them off. Next up, we've got the Sensah crank set. So the box is pretty beaten up here, but all the components inside seem to be fine. The bottom back bracket should fit my bike. And here we go. So that is the main chain ring on the drive side. And actually, I think it's a pretty sweet looking chain ring, and it's probably lighter than you think it would be actually. It feels nice, feels sturdy. So I look forward to getting that on. And the rest of the components are just stuffed and packed neatly into here. So I've gone for the 50-34 tooth, so a little bit smaller, but better for commuting, I think. Really, I don't need a big crank. I'm not going to weigh any of these components today because there's so many videos of people weighing them. I'm just going to weigh the bike before and after that it's got this set on. And here we go, the main event. So let's start to get in here. I'm just going to pull it open. And here we are. So we've got a chain. Sometimes these have come ungreased. This one looks like it's got grease in it. It's one of those YBN chains as well. Yaban, I believe, is that what they are called. But if I take some of these out, here we go. So we got the shifters themselves. And actually, now that I've got a close-up, they actually look quite nice. They do shift quite nicely as well, actually. I'm looking forward to using these. The rubber hoods actually don't feel that cheap. They don't feel premium, but they don't feel that cheap either. A lot of people said they feel quite cheap. But yeah, here are those. Next up, turns out the cassette is in here. So here's that Sensah. Oh, it's a Sensah set itself, so that's cool. I've gone for a big one on the back. I've gone 11-34. Once again, because I'm commuting, I just want to make the hills easy, make it no problem. And this is all one big spider on there, so that makes it easy to put on with just the final two pieces on there. Finally, last two bits, we've got the front derailleur here. Comes nice and clean, looks fairly small, looks fairly slick. My high and low adjustments have started to seize up on my old one, so there's more adjustability here, hopefully. Apparently that works well. And probably the pièce de la résistance, the actual rear derailleur itself. And the carbon on here, once again, actually looks really cool. There's no sharp edges or anything. I think it looks like quite nice quality. These don't really spin like a ceramic bearing, but to be honest, it's only going to be moving through this fast anyway, so they feel like they flow quite nicely. But it does feel pretty robust, feels pretty solid, and actually it feels fairly light. So if I bring you an extra close up here, so it looks like I have got one of the newer ones with the aluminium piece in here, so it should be a bit more robust and should hopefully not break on me as easily as some of the older ones. I will give you a quick close up on the carbon on the rear derailleur there. So it probably doesn't save much, it's just the outside cage, but I think it looks good, it looks tidy. So here is my commuter bike. I've just weighed it in at 10.35 kilos. So some of the things that are going to be changing, the handlebars are going to be swapped out, some bar tape's going to be put on them. I've got the Prime Doyen handlebars. Have a look at the link up here if you want to check that out. And I'm going to keep everything on it. So I'm keeping the mud guards, I'm going to keep the handlebar bag, all of the pump and the spares, because that's how I'm going to ride the bike. So we'll see if it comes to any lighter. 10.35 kilos currently. As I said earlier, I cannot wait to get this thing on my bike. It's going to be happening on the weekend. It's Wednesday now, but I'm going to do it on the weekend. But for you, that's going to happen right now. Stripping the bike down is always a simple task. It's easier to take it off than it is on. Quite literally taking off all the components. So with that being said, let's just get straight to the building part. So I've ran into my first hurdle. On the other side here, this one's twisted in fine all the way. This one, however, gets to about this point and it really struggles to go any further. So that is a big problem, and I think it's more of a manufacturing fault from Sensah because it just does not go in smoothly. All the other bottom brackets that I've got in here have gone in nice and smoothly, and the other side did, so I think it's more of a manufacturer's thing. Okay, so I've got it on eventually. As you can see, I've made a proper meal of it. I've got some protection around here now as well, because in case the chain comes off again, that's why the paint's gone. But I actually used a pipe wrench. So the pipe wrench kind of tightens itself as you rotate it. It was my dad's idea, not mine, but it got it on eventually and it worked like a treat. From here, the crankset went on as you would expect it to. Then the same with the cassette. They're easy to remove and really easy to put back on as well. So it went on, because it's all one big piece, really easily. The cassette went on just fine, as you would expect a cassette to, and it's nice to have a good clean one on there. The rear derailleur here went on no problem, just as you would normally expect. The only one thing to watch out for is where the B-limit screw rests in here, and you just got to make sure that that sits in the right place, and then it will go on as you want it to. Then popping the handlebars on is also another simple job. I just put it on the ground to make sure that the bars were nice and level. For the shifters themselves, I actually found it easier to take the clamp off the shifter, slide the clamp onto the bars, and then reapply the shifter from there. Then it was just a case of lining everything up and making sure that everything was in the position that I wanted it to be in. Running the cables through the bars is actually a super easy job, thankfully, and Sensah has multiple options where you can run the cables, so you can run them the exact position that you would like them to. With all the cables in, we could then start to work on setting up the rear and front shifting. Okay, so most of the kit's on. It's looking good. I had these folded up here for a while, so they're kind of creased now. But they seem to be, they are on nicely. All the bars are looking good. I definitely prefer this much like sleeker setup where all the cables are a bit narrower there. Then we got the chain ring. The chain is on. The shifters are on. And it seems to be shifting well. Before I talk to you about the shifting, I'll just tell you about the chain. So the chain did come with grease, so I've degreased it. I basically chucked it in a bath of degreaser, shook it around, then did it with normal bike wash, and then finally did it with some water just to get rid of all the factory grease. So when that gets lubed, that should be working beautifully. So before we move on, why don't I show you the shifting? So it took me a little while, but I got there in the end, and now it seems to be going very, very nicely. It's fairly quiet, even without chain lube, which is good, and does shift up quite well. I think it's quite easy to use these shifters. And then the front here also seems to be shifting pretty decently. So there's one of the trim levels, and you go down, and come back up, and we're in. I don't really use that intermediate level there. It just seems to go straight up into the big one, but that does shift really well. One of the issues that I had with the front shifter was getting enough cable tension on there. So thankfully, because I couldn't get the space on the other side of the front derailleur here, so thankfully I've got this adjustment right here, which allows you just to get a bit more cable tension going, and you can then run in the right place that you want to. In terms of the actual shifters themselves, like the brake system feels great. It was easy to get them set up, and actually the feel of the hood feels like my kind of Dura Ace size. So ergonomically, I think that suits me really well. So these are the last things going on the bike. They're these Azaxis pedals, $12.99 from Amazon. On the branding itself, they're called ProMend, but they seem fairly nice, but they don't seem to spin so well. So we'll see what they look like when they're on the bike and how well they move. So these Azaxis pedals, they don't spin very nicely, but for all in all, for 12 quid, I don't think you can go wrong. They're fairly sleek, they're just pretty small, and they might loosen up and get freer over time as the bearings move around a bit more. So Cinelli bar tape is going on, and we are on. So there's the bar tape. It was actually super easy to apply this stuff. It's really soft, it's really malleable. I messed up the ends a little bit, but whatever. I think it looks great, and it actually has like small flecks of purple in there to go with the paint a little bit as well. So the final thing we've got to do here is to actually weigh it. So I've got my scales here. These are the ones that I always use. I always get it hooked up onto the saddle. And let's go. These are the ones that I always use. Settle a little bit. I always get it hooked up onto the 9.3 kilos I've got here, and that includes all of my lights that are on. I've got the mud guards on, and I've finally got all the bar tape on as well, which will add a bit of weight. I've still got my handlebar bag on, so that is a massive weight improvement, I think. So there we have it, the whole bike's finished. We have got new bar tape on some new handlebars that look pretty sleek, and some new shifters right there, they're looking great. All the cables are really neatened up. On the other side here, it will need this frame protector is a bit too high, so I need to put one lower and take that one off. I've just kept the original brakes because they're probably better than the ZTTO ones. Then coming down to the crank, so I went for a 50-34 tooth. I really like the smaller 50. It's probably just easier to stay in that one as I'm going to work and stuff. It's only a commuter bike, and it's massive 11-34 cassette there. So I think that looks pretty good. And then finally going down to this nice carbon Sensah Empire group set. It shifts really well as I sit on the bike and stuff, so I can't wait to get a full review, and I'll get that out to you as soon as possible. On the time of filming this, unfortunately GCN have just released their video today, so I'm not sure how much that'll overshadow my video. It took too long to come, this stuff, but there it is. There's my new bike, or all my new components, and I think it's looking great. I can't wait to use them.